Was that on purpose, that access is like a seminar first, a webinar first? That's a new thing to me anyway.
Yeah, I think we're rolling according to home TV. So take it away, John, I guess.
Well, let me call the meeting to order, and first item on the agenda, of course, is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to add to the agenda? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, I see Jim, the second from Bill. Okay, all in favor, please just raise your hand. Okay, are there any opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Moving on to the minutes from our last meeting. Is there any, somebody who would like to suggest any additions or edits to the minutes from our last meeting? Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of very minor suggestions. One is that there is a little bit of a change in voice in the minutes between a sort of a past tense and a present tense that might make it smoother if it was all in the past tense. And then a couple of very minor things under new business. I believe Harvey and Kilbasso mentioned a rain garden at Tower, T-O-W-A-R garden.
Okay, anything else, Bill? Or
yeah, under the staff report, there was an update on the tree planting and tree distribution, which was stated as a large success. I was going to say a huge success. I just thinking really. Under the green team, there was a mention of 1,008 vehicles dropped off, almost 85,000 pounds of electronics. And I think what that meant to say was diverted almost 85,000 pounds of electronics from landfill. And lastly, on the Transportation Commission update, the last sentence is there is an upcoming discussion about traffic lighting on Mount Hope on the Township Board agenda. So those are just some minor changes that we might consider.
okay, did you get all those, Leroy? Okay, sounds good. Okay, with those friendly amendments, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved.
Okay, and a second? Okay, I see from Ned a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And now we have an opportunity for public remarks. Are there any public remarks out there? Okay, hearing none. We move on tonight. We do have a green theme, and Kendra is going to talk to us about saving our wetlands. So Kendra, you've got the floor.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Good evening, my name is Kendra Thielen-Krasowski. Along with my husband, Mike, we appear before you as we had become advocates for the wetlands. Professionally, I'm a clinical social worker with 25 years of experience providing psychotherapy. Often in my practice, clients are asking me to help solve their problems. They want me to tell them the action steps of exactly what to do to make things better for them. Sometimes it makes sense for me to directly give them those answers. Other times it is more helpful for me to ask thoughtful questions to help them find the answers themselves. Tonight, I'm going to do both with you, as our identified problem is the need to protect the wetlands. To start, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Did you know that 25% of the township is wetlands? Second, that there are local, state, and federal laws mandating that we protect the wetlands. Third, the township board has declared goals to protect the wetlands. Next, I will quote directly from the code on that. Preservation of the remaining township wetlands is a natural condition, shall be, and is necessary to maintain hydrological, economical, recreational, and aesthetic natural resource values for existing and future residents of the township. And therefore, the Township Board declares a policy of no net loss of wetlands. Furthermore, the township declares a long-term goal of net gain of wetlands to be accomplished through review of degraded or destroyed wetlands in the township and through cooperative work with landowners, such as myself, using incentives and voluntary agreements to restore the wetlands. And finally, did you know that there is township code already on the books to protect the wetlands and in the 20-foot natural vegetation strip, but that code can be hard to understand. Let's please take the opportunity to educate the Meridian Township on protecting the wetlands. Most people want to do the right thing. They just don't know what that is. Here are the 3 action steps to help protect the wetlands. First, let's help Meridian Township residents and staff notice the wetlands, help them understand the importance of the wetlands to them as individuals, as in a community. Basically, what is it in it for them to care about the wetlands? Second, let's tell them directly what is okay to do and what is not okay to do. The simple do's and don'ts. And we have a brochure that will come further along in this presentation. Third, please repeat those do's and don'ts multiple times and in multiple ways to all ages. This helps for buy-in and behavior change. People, for the most part, want to do the right thing. They just don't know what to do. Let's help them know what to do. Let's take advantage of people being stuck in their homes because of COVID. This is an opportunity for people to rediscover nature and the importance of it, especially as we have had to distance from one another. This is an opportunity to notice what they ordinarily overlook. I've been encouraging people to go outside and explore the environment. Take the challenge yourself. Notice how many wetlands there are in the township. As over 25% of the township is wetlands, we have an obligation to protect them, especially as local, state, and federal laws say that we need to. So let's please share the do's and don'ts through community outreach and education. Simple action steps repeated over and over in different mediums. Mailed brochures, emails, social media outreach, elementary and secondary science homework, some fun challenge between Okemos and Hazlitt students and residents, some catchy jingle, along with signage for people to notice the wetlands. These are a few of the brainstorm ideas shared during Leroy's Green Dialogue. The brochure, which we will review in a few minutes, should be mailed to everyone who lives on a wetland, also given to those who purchase homes, property on the wetland, along with builders and contractors. People are overwhelmed with information that is thrown at them. Therefore, it needs to be repeated and simple. Repeated messages are needed for it to sink in, as there's too much to distract people. Likely, many of you sitting in front of me are way more intelligent about me than more intelligent than me about scientific things. But please know that I know about the psychology of people, how to get buy-in and make needed behavioral changes. I know you plan to spend time defining terminology during phase 1 of your green infrastructure audit, but please concurrently educate residents, staff, and contractors on what to do and what not to do. We have a real opportunity right now, especially as people need something to focus on other than COVID and the political climate. Let's unite together to protect the environment. Let's somehow challenge to do so. Simple action steps, fun, engaging competition. Please put energy and resources into community education. That is part 1 of problem solving. Give you some of the answers. Part 2 of problem solving, I will ask you to thoughtfully consider the answer to 5 questions. First, given that 25% of the township is wetlands, does that help you think differently about the need to protect them? especially as we have mandated laws along with township for declared goals to protect the wetlands? Second, how does the township currently fulfill that obligation? And how well are the employees doing their jobs regarding the wetlands? FYI, we wouldn't be sitting in front of you today if things were going smoothly. Third, how do you plan to educate Meridian Township on protecting and saving the wetlands? Fourth, how do you plan to educate and support township employees to do their job to protect the wetlands? How can you support them differently, especially as they are likely overwhelmed with competing job tasks and demands? Finally, how are you going to put into action some of the suggestions in part 1 of this presentation? Most people want to do the right thing, especially if they know how it benefits them. Please educate them repeatedly, the do's and don'ts with simple action steps. And if that doesn't work, please enforce the laws and code already in the books. Please protect the wetlands. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Thank you to Leroy, Cliff, and Emma for their work on their brochure. And let's look at it together right now. Leroy, can you pass that, put that up for folks to look at?
Okay.
So
I
as
wanna-
you can see on the front,
I want to
go ahead,
thank
Leroy.
I want to thank Kendra for bringing some of this information to our attention, and to Courtney for inviting her to speak to us. So I think Courtney is the main reason that she's here, but I also just want to articulate the my appreciation to learn with Kendra and all of you about the wetlands and some of these opportunities that Kendra hinted at. This brochure seemed like a good way to kind of begin to talk about what are some of the issues that Kendra faced personally. What are some of the things that she discovered? So I asked her to come up with kind of a list of those things, which was an eye opener for me. And we started to include those in this draft, which is in the works, with some help from Emma and Cliff. Emma being our staff naturalist. So I'll hand it back to you, Kendra, if you like.
Sure, thank you. Again, I'm grateful to Courtney and to Leroy and to Emma and Cliff and everyone else sitting here for the opportunity to speak and efforts to protect the wetland. I'm really grateful for a brochure. I think it's really helpful to have something on hand to give to folks throughout the community to know what to do and not to do. And everyone did a really good job of showing like how helpful the wetlands are through the wetland services. And I'm not going to go through that because I feel like the majority of you probably know that and what the benefits of the wetlands are. But I do want to highlight, you know, kind of the do's and the don'ts. You know, given that 25% of the township is wetlands, I mean, that's significant. And then you add on an additional 20-foot buffer to that. And to protect those wetlands and all the natural wildlife, you know, we need to do certain things to protect them. And in particular, in protecting that 20-foot natural vegetation buffer. So certain things like not removing trees and stumps and natural vegetation and not mowing in the wetlands or the buffer. You know, not using chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides within, you know, the 20-foot natural vegetation buffer. And, you know, planting native vegetation and removing invasive species. I think, and then not putting other things like yard waste. I literally saw someone over in the Lake Lansing area putting their yard waste out into the wetlands out there, or, you know, putting in fill materials such as soil, dirt, stones, mulch. You know, this is just a simple list of do's and don'ts. And I think, you know, as we moved on the wetlands, we certainly didn't know what these rules are. And I had to search really hard to find them, and it wasn't simple. And so I wanted to create something that would be simple for people to know simply what the do's and don'ts are. As I said earlier, people are overwhelmed with information, and as easy and simple as we can pass that along to them, the more successful we will be with behavior change and protecting the wetlands. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you, Kendra. Would anybody have any questions or comments about the presentation? Go ahead, Susan.
I think it's a great idea. I think one of the biggest problems is disposal of yard waste in the wetlands. And on natural protected land in the township that goes beyond just the wetlands. You walk along, if you take the trail from Hamilton back towards Edgewood School, there's all sorts of yard waste that landowners have been dumping back along that trail. You look along Cornell, there's all sorts of yard waste dumped along the wetlands there. When we first moved in 2008, one of the first things, just noticing that, I did get signs put up to try and to protect the wetlands, to keep people from dumping in the wetlands, because they were doing it all the time. You look around, you walk around Cornell Elementary School, and you look at where yard waste is being dumped on public land. So it goes beyond just wetlands. I mean, wetlands are important, but it goes beyond wetlands in terms of disposal of yard waste. Putting that front and center in bold in whatever, it's a $75 fine to do it to dump yard waste on a wetland the first time, and it's each time. My guess is that in terms of if the brochure is going out to the general public, that's far more an issue than, for instance, talking to a developer, because they're not going to likely talk to a developer. So get that, if you can get that front and center, in my mind, that's one of the biggest problems that I've seen walking in the area, and I don't want to even think about how many miles I've walked since March on trails. And it's a major problem, and it continues to be. So I'm with you. We need to educate, but I see that as one of the most major problems. Off my soapbox.
Yeah, well, I think, Susan, that if more people knew about the penalty, certainly I never heard that there was a penalty for anything like that. I bet most people haven't. That might deter at least some people. It wouldn't certainly deter everybody, but I think just like Kendra has said, making people aware of the requirements, and then, in that case, about the dumping, making them aware of the penalty certainly would deter some of the bad actors. Other comments, questions? Bill?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Commissioner Maston was saying, and we did have this conversation maybe 7-8 years ago about trying to increase the use of the signage just to alert people that the wetlands are there and that they're potentially dumping something into a spot where they're not supposed to be. And I think being a little bit more proactive with some outreach materials makes a lot of sense. And it seems to me that the township has the regular practice of notifying abutting landowners of development applications. So technically identifying properties that are within some distance of an area that appears on a wetland map is not a huge technical matter. So getting those information sent out to the people who are most directly affected is not a huge technical constraint, and I would support that. And I love the brochure.
Yeah, the brochure is great.
Yeah, Phil?
I like the brochure a lot as well, and Dr. Matson, I agree with you. I think we need to educate people on dumping in the wetlands. And I think you can never control it, because that would be an impossible thing. But it's kind of like throwing litter out of your trash and throwing litter trash out of your car in the 70s. You saw it back then. Now you would never see it, because you would have people pulling that car over, making a citizen's arrest. People are so appalled by it. I think we need to similarly let the community know and build up consensus that these wetlands are our natural treasure, and to dump wet yard waste in it is objectionable to the neighbors and to the whole community. So we'll build that consciousness to know that these are areas to be protected and preserved. We don't dump yard waste or any waste in them. So it'll be a gradual process, and I commend you for getting those signs put up 7 years ago to re-educate people. Use letters regularly and even signs, just raise consciousness about these wetlands and natural preserves. The township doesn't clearly support them. That's why we have successful land preservation millage and parks millages. So with the public awareness, I think the public will themselves enforce these rules.
Courtney.
I just want to thank Kendra for being here, and let everybody know that Kendra's been probably more well-versed than most of us now with her experience through learning the wetland ordinance. And she's certainly taught me a lot. And there was a lot of things I didn't know as well. So I do think this is really a good opportunity for, as Phil alluded to, an opportunity for residents to teach residents too, because Kendra's been such an advocate for the wetlands, and not only the public wetlands, but adjacent to private property owners as well. And I agree. I think most people want to do the right thing. I just don't know if they fully understand the detriment and how fragile these ecosystems are. So not only dumping, which certainly adds, you know, who knows what to the wetlands, but just what type of plants need to be in the wetlands, making sure that we're not adding fill, and keeping, you know, that natural ecosystem, you know, viable. So I agree. I think this is a really, really good idea of the flyer, and posting signs is certainly helpful, but we can't really do that on private properties. But if we can teach other residents, you know, why it is so important, and Kendra kind of alluded to it, why it's important to them. I think this is a really good opportunity. So I just want to thank you. You put a lot of work into this, and appreciate it.
Go ahead, Jim. You got on mute though.
Am I unmuted now? No?
Yep, you're okay now. Oh, now you're muted again.
Okay.
Now you're okay.
It says mute on here, but I applaud this, but I wonder if there might be use for a companion to suggest what people can do with their yard waste. Any positive way of either disposing or making use of. It's one thing for someone to know, well, don't throw it over there, and then, so what do I do? Throw it into the trash? Put it into my trash collection? I don't particularly like to do that myself, but just some idea of what an alternative might be. If you had this and an alternative, it might go a long way.
Kendra? You got to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Thank you for everyone for your feedback and for the ideas. You know, I think it's a good idea to figure out what people can do with their yard waste. And the situation that we mostly were dealing with was folks removing stuff from the natural vegetation strip and wetlands, because of not likely knowing what the long-term effects of that are. So I think educating people what the long-term effects of things are and actually telling them what the do's and don'ts are is just really important to do. So I see it, again, I feel like people for the most part want to do the right thing. They just need to know what the right thing is. And if we want to have no more net loss, and in fact have net gain of the wetlands in this township, we have to take some action steps to make that happen. And through education in positive ways is probably the route to do so. And again, thank you for the opportunity, everyone.
Kendra, or Leroy, is the brochure finalized at this point?
No, it's just made changes about 30 minutes ago.
Okay.
So there's room for, I really like Jim's idea too for a companion brochure related to yard waste. Thanks, Jim, for that.
Yeah, don't you have something, Leroy, about composting or?
Yeah, I've got about 5 different ones, and I think this would be good to. I love Cliff's suggestion for kind of fitting this in with some of the templates that they've used at Tri-County Regional Planning, and sort of creating a series of these that we can kind of can fit together in an outreach, kind of a planned outreach, planned, repetitive, robust outreach campaign.
So Leroy, do you have, are there regular, is there a mailing sometime during the year that this brochure and maybe a composting brochure could go out with? Because, I would think that's the big expense, is the mailing expense, as opposed to the printing of a brochure would be not, cost-wise wouldn't be a problem, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, there's certainly some options there. There's also we've been tagging onto some of the utility billing, so there's some options there. Plus, there's regular township publications that where we could put this stuff. The good thing about it is that it also relates to some of our requirements as a stormwater for stormwater education. So all of our green infrastructure outreach relates to some of that. So I'm excited about this. I know it's been difficult for Kendra to go through this, but it's been a bit of a catalyst for bringing some of these issues to the forefront. And I know a lot of you are excited about this from the conversations that we've had over the last month. So Ned is excited to share something.
Go ahead, Ned. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so the one other, I mean, I was actually going to say the same thing that Jim did, that I think it would be very useful to people. You always want to say what's a positive option as opposed to saying don't do this. But one of the things that I didn't see mentioned in there, which I think from the point of view of a lot of yard waste is relevant, is that mulching mowers just take the nutrients and feed them back to your lawn. So at least for things like lawn care, rather than gathering up leaves and grass and all that stuff and trying to haul it away and figure out where to put it, where it's ultimately going to create biological oxygen demand somewhere, just feed it back to your own soil, and at the same time minimize whatever need you may perceive you have for externally applied fertilizer, things like that. So I don't know, I didn't see that mentioned as a kind of practice that could be could decrease the need for dumping stuff somewhere else, but I think it might be worth it to at least mention it, or at least mention it in the companion brochure if we're going to have something like that. I certainly support all of these goals, and I do think, you know, getting people aware of stuff like this it's so hard because they're so busy. We're all so busy, and you know, I mean, especially with the language in Washington, drain the swamp. I mean, the quote unquote swamp is viewed as, you know, the reservoir of illness and so forth, but it's the opposite, of course.
Well, you know, in previous discussions about green infrastructure dollars too, we've talked about working through the schools, and I think this would be a natural too if, you know, we're working with Okemos and Hazlet schools to maybe whoever our contact is there, discuss with them how the brochures can be used within their classes so that we indoctrinate the kids to talk to their parents about these issues too. That would be a good way to reach out to the general public, I think, in a fairly inexpensive way. Other questions or comments before we move on? Luca, go ahead.
For the outreach to the schools, we are still online as in Okemos. So I'm guessing we could probably try and do something where we do it with the teachers, where they might show it on a Zoom call or something. But from the point of like Okemos, in-person kind of brochures would still have to be mailed straight to the parents' houses anyway.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Kendra, go ahead.
Finally, one last thing I just want to say about this. I really want to look at a positive way, letting people know and educate the do's and the don'ts. But there are laws on the books that people get fined big dollars for destroying the wetlands, you know, local, state, and federal. So we really want to avoid that kind of situation. So, you know, I hate to put that kind of incentive in there too, but if you don't get the buy-in, these are laws that need to be followed. So.
Yes, and we need to let everybody know about them too. Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Moving on to new business, and thank you, Kendra. That was very, I think, informative, and you know, I think you're really helping us move ahead in this area. Leroy, you want to talk about the regional government environmental networking meeting?
Yeah, just to remind folks, the part of our climate action plan is includes networking with local governments and other partners in the region. And thank you, John, for helping launch the first one 3 months ago. In November, Lansing is going to host, and I don't know if you all have had experience with using Microsoft Teams, but it's going to be, instead of Zoom, it's going to be on Microsoft Teams. Lansing will host. If you're interested in participating in that, it's a 1 or 1.5 hour networking session where we kind of learn what's going on in East Lansing, but also involve the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission and Townships Association, others that might want to chime in. And we have had some interesting presentations from Williamstown Township and others in the past. That's also available if you'd like to look at it at the recording. I'm not sure how to do that on Microsoft Teams, but it's going to be a learning experience. So that's November 17th at 1 o'clock. So hit me up if you'd be interested in more info on that.
Okay, thank you, Leroy. This is probably a good time for me to just mention, I got an email today from Eagle, the state agency, Eagle, and they're hosting a Catalyst Communities Kickoff Academy webinar. That's a mouthful, on November 19th, 2 to 4 p.m. This is related to the governor's My Healthy Planet plan and her climate change initiative. It's basically designed those 2 hours to help communities deal with climate change issues. So I've signed up, and I sent a link to Leroy. So if anybody's interested in attending the webinar, either contact me or Leroy, and we could forward the invitation. Let's see. We're on to old business, and now we're on to the green infrastructure audit and the draft memo to the Planning Commission. Leroy?
I was hoping that Cliff might join us. Some of you probably saw Cliff's 10-pager, which is just a super impressive summary based on some of the staff feedback and some of this template that was developed for the green infrastructure audit. If you don't mind, I'll just briefly share my screen. I took a few minutes earlier before our meeting to just summarize Cliff has about 10 points for phase 1 and phase 2 suggestions. And I can share these with you in the meeting summary, but they're all listed and highlighted in your packet, which you probably have at your hands. But they're divided into phase 1 and phase 2. And the suggestion that I think some of you have had, and Cliff reiterated, is that we basically come up with a recommendation that the Planning Commission take a look at this and make their own suggestions for what are the priorities that make the most sense, what are they most interested in, and then look to staff for some guidance in integrating some of these changes into our code of ordinances. So again, he's divided this up into phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, the low-hanging fruit. Phase 2, which seemed very doable, but not without the willingness of our trustees and our Planning Commission. So I think Bill had suggested that perhaps we make a motion. Bill, do you want to add to anything to what I've said?
Yeah, thanks. That's an excellent summary, and I agree with what the way you put that. My suggestion, I think, would be to forward Cliff's memo to the Planning Commission. Excuse me, and I have a couple of suggestions for. Hang on one second. For paraphrasing, just selecting a few sentences from Cliff's memo to put into a cover letter to the Planning Commission and ask the chair to put this item onto the next agenda, and then have the full background information in the packet. Excuse me, and that will give us a chance to put the issue to the Planning Commission and get some initial reaction. My sense is that the next Planning Commission meeting may have a couple of fairly big applications, so it might not make it onto the next agenda, but to get it in the works.
Well, that sounds good to me. Let me ask the commission, does everybody kind of approve of that strategy and that next step? If you kind of think it's a good idea, either raise your hand, or if you want to make a comment, or okay, let's makes sense to me. Where's my hand? Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
One addition, or it may be in there, I just didn't see it, and I admit I did not look at the packet. But if you look at in a number of the residential areas, Cornell, Indian, Tacoma area, there's a number of the ponds that are in these areas. They're mowed right to the water edge with no buffer. The phosphorus levels, because I monitored, because I've got my remote lab for teaching, I monitored the phosphorus levels in the one in Cornell, and they're extremely high, and you can kind of tell that by the algae in the little pond. One of the first places that I could see in terms of encouraging use of buffer strips, native planting, is around these ponds. Reduce the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus loading to these ponds. You reduce the amount of oxygen aeration that's needed in order to keep them oxic. It just seems like a win-win if we could do that. And it seems like because it's part of, I guess, homeowner associations or whatever, and it's essentially part of the community, that would be one place to start rather than getting individual homeowners to try and do the same thing. And I didn't see that in that list, but I would like to encourage that that be explicitly stated in that list.
If I might respond real quick, that has been a topic of discussion in this ongoing green infrastructure discussion. And there are some specific spots in the ordinance where if you have a water body that somebody might swim in, you have to, there's a requirement that the slopes be made such that somebody could crawl out, right? So it's not dangerous.
Right.
And it turns out that people being able to crawl out of a pond makes it easy for geese to crawl out of a pond. So by trying to make a water body that looks usable for people, you kind of can unintentionally create a nuisance by encouraging wildfowl to use that. So when we get into the specific ordinance changes, that may be a spot where we get to that. And we have been focusing quite a bit on the ponds, lakes, lagoons in the various neighborhoods that were created as aesthetic features, and thinking about how to get at those. So I completely agree that that's an important issue to address, and whether it's in, as I understand it, phase one is about definitions, about trying to bring us to decide whether the township adopts the notion of green infrastructure, and if so, how it defines it. And then phase two is getting into specific changes to ordinances that would enact that vision.
Thank you.
Well, I think we kind of discussed next steps, so I think we're all set. Any final comments or questions? Okay. Leroy, go ahead. Unmute yourself, though.
I would just mention very briefly that we've talked about this being an environmental review of our policies and programs and procedures, with the green infrastructure audit being the first step, which is now phase one and phase two. But on a broader step, there's ongoing things that will come our way, such as what Susan mentioned, that we may want to just put on in the parking lot, so to speak. No pun intended. Maybe some of which we can act on. And I just want to pull up a slide here to show some examples of what I'm talking about, if it's helpful. So we talked about an outreach campaign. We talked about the other day, Giannis mentioned that there's a new development that's being built, and he was saying that we really need to have the developer pay for the LED streetlights. There may be some other types of goals that we want to mention as our subdivisions are going in now, because they're going to be around for a long time. So we really need to look at some of those policies. We recently looked at the mowing height. We've also got the climate sustainability plan. The township is setting goals for the coming year. Courtney and Phil handle most of that pretty well, but there's these other emergent opportunities that we just want to be mindful of. So in the larger scheme of reviewing our environmental, our policies, our programs, our procedures. So that's all I wanted to say.
Hey, thank you, Leroy. Okay. I guess we're moving along to the green infrastructure grants that we had, or the projects that we had talked about, the $10,000 funding from the township board, and a few of us got together the other day just to do some brainstorming, and Rose is going to kind of give a little summary of some ideas that came out of that meeting.
Hi, and forgive me if I'm giving you any redundant information. I did just join in the meeting, so I'm feeling a little behind. But yeah, a few of us got together, and I will say there's no shortage of good ideas. We have lots of different ideas about how this money can be spent. We looked into rain gardens, green roofs, permeable pavement, tree planting, you know, all sorts of stuff. And what we kind of came out with in the end was that maybe rather than being prescriptive about what this money should be used for, maybe we go straight to the end users and talk to them about what might be the best use of these funds. So John proposed that we break the funds into two and offer two $5,000 grants to each school district, Hazlet and Okemos, supporting a general green infrastructure project. And we're envisioning that those projects are student-led, involving students all the way through, likely to be used by the community. We'd like them to be completed in 2021. We're asking that they come up with sort of a game plan with a timeline, and just show that they can be collaborative. So what do you all think about that? One other thing I want to say before you tell me what you think is that we all felt too, and I think that generally the board feels this way, that there is real interest in continuing with the tree initiative because it was so successful before. So this might be in addition to, or part of these funds might also be supporting continuing our tree initiative also.
Yeah, I guess a major question for the commission here too is, you know, our brainstorming led us in the direction of working with the two school districts in making a fairly flexible approach. So and we obviously incorporated in the discussions the ideas that we had come up at the previous meeting. So I guess one question we've got for you is, should we work with the school districts? And number two is, you know, should we do kind of a flexible approach and give them some ideas, but give them some flexibility also? Thoughts about what Rose said or the two questions I just raised? Bill?
Thank you. I'm not sure my microphone is working real well, so I'll talk a little slower. The idea of these $5,000 grants, for me at least, was what I envisioned the commission doing with this money last year. The tree project took off and was a big success, and hopefully we can do it again in 2021, even if it requires us going back to the board for additional money. But this idea of grants, competitive grants for innovative ideas was really what I thought this money can be best used for, to really bring out an entrepreneurial spirit and engage students and other activists, and best use for this money to do some demonstration projects. So I think it's a great idea. Really good start, and I think the sooner we can get underway for 2021, the better. The one caveat of the schools got their hands full right now. Those of you like Luke and Courtney who are very involved with it, the schools, as students and parents know that, trying to teach online and in person. I worry about asking too much of them right now, and they're really struggling just to educate students right now.
Can I just say, you know, one thing that I didn't mention, because I didn't want to ramble on for a really long time, was just that we had thought about if this was an idea that the board could get behind, that we would develop some kind of framework. We would seek out professionals to lead whatever type of project it may be, whether that's somebody who knows about solar or somebody knows about green roofs, to be the resource person, to be the point person, to kind of keep the ball rolling and to orchestrate the project. So we do recognize that the schools are strapped right now. And I think that the idea here would be, next steps would be to develop a framework and to kind of pull together some resources and some professionals to help us.
Yeah, there was a solar schools project that was done a while back, and one of the elements that I think worked pretty well was the identifying a kind of a outside resource person. Sometimes it was somebody for solar, sometimes it was somebody in the industry, sometimes it was just a knowledgeable person that would actually kind of work with the school team, the project team. And I think, yeah, this approach would be, there's a certain amount of teacher time, I think, involved, and certainly some significant student involvement. But I think project type team approaches are encouraged at schools, so that could work well. Other thoughts, comments? Luca, what do you think about what we've been talking about since you're in the schools? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree a lot. I do agree that the teachers and students both have a lot of time on my hands, or on our hands. I've been getting a lot more homework than usual during the regular school year. So I do agree with all of this.
Other thoughts or comments? Okay, no, should we kind of consider this a general framework for moving ahead and kind of do some more fleshing out? Okay, well, if you think that's a good approach, why don't you just wave at me or raise your hand? Does that make sense to folks? Okay. Okay, okay, moving right along. Sounds good. Chair's report, I have nothing to share at this time, which brings us up to the staff report.
Just a couple quick things. I would like to share this media campaign with you and invite your ideas on that. So I'll be sending that out. Don't feel like you have to contribute, but if you'd like to perhaps adopt a topic, maybe be a spokesperson or help come up with a catchy jingle. John came up with one this morning about, not this morning, about dog poop. And maybe he can share that, not tonight necessarily, but so that's underway. I also wanted to just mention that Amber Clark, our new neighborhood and economic development person, has offered to speak to us either this coming month or in January about her outreach to neighborhoods. And there might be some overlap of our some opportunities for us to partner. If you're interested in having her, I can schedule that. And related to that is with the time change, do we want to schedule that earlier, like 6:30 versus 7? So I'll just throw that out for discussion briefly.
Well, I think having her come to speak is an excellent idea. I think that could be a real helpful to us as we kind of discuss different issues. I have no opinion about the 6:30 or 7 o'clock. Comments, thoughts? John?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to hear this, but this was kind of the funny thing that we were talking about earlier. And I just put it together. It doesn't have any music behind it yet. It's just some lyrics. I just kind of threw it together. I can play it, but I'm not sure how well you'll be able to hear it. But I'll run it anyway, just to see what you think.
You can teach them to roll over, sit up and shake, catch the stick or the ball, but give them a break. Even if they wanted to collect it with a scoop, those paws just weren't designed for picking up poop. When it rains, that poop starts to break down and sink into the aquifer and the water we drink. So you're gonna need a bag, or you could use a scoop, but whatever you choose to pick up that poop.
Now that's it, and it doesn't have any music with it yet. I do have a rhythm track that I've been working on. It might be a little corny or funny, but I thought for some folks, it might just get their attention and get them thinking about what they're doing when they're out walking their dog.
I love it, John.
Well, I'm going to try and put a little music together, and I'm not sure. I just got the lyrics together to kind of throw them out there. It may well be that it's sung, and it may not be me singing it. It might be Deshaun, somebody else singing it. It might be Leroy. I don't know, But it's something that we're kind of throwing around and looking at this point.
Leroy would be a good guy to talk about poop. I think that's a great idea.
I always enjoy talking about poop.
Right. Well, okay.
Bruce,
Anything else, Leroy?
Just briefly, let's see, Green Team, we're thinking about a spring recycling event. We're also talking about improvements to the recycling center. And tomorrow, giving a brief presentation about the tree planting project. If any of you would like to kind of review what I'm going to say or participate, let me know. I'm certainly going to give a lot of credit to the tree team, show some pictures of the planting day. And thank you, Courtney and Phil, for letting us in on your agenda. That's all I got for now.
Thank you, Leroy. On our agenda, we're up to environmental justice. Oh, Phil, did you have a comment? You got to unmute. You got to unmute, Phil.
Thank you. We do have a presentation slot scheduled for that time. Leroy is going to lead it, but if anyone else is available that's been involved in it, that would be great. Luca, with your effort to recruit lots of students to come along, that would be really nice if you could show up and just say a couple of words about the project as well. Particularly if we'll be going back to them for some extra money this year. To brag a little, because as Bill said, it wasn't just a good project, it was a great project, and many in the community are still talking about it. So those that have been involved in it, if you can be there for the presentation, it would be good. And Rose might give you a chance to plug the Tree City idea.
Go ahead, Luca.
So about the credit that I'm being given, I don't know exactly where that's coming from. I don't know how much I've been kind of in this for the tree team. I was really in for the recycling event, but I don't know if I might have mentioned the tree initiative, but I don't know if I can accept that credit fully, because I don't know if it came from me.
Okay.
Okay, we're on to environmental justice. Rose or Courtney, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Courtney, did you happen to get my email that I sent you earlier today? Sorry.
I'm looking for it right now.
Okay, it's no big deal. So we don't have a whole lot to report. I'll say briefly that Courtney and I have had a few conversations, a few back and forths. One idea that we were kind of batting around was focusing on multi-family recycling. And so I did make some phone calls about that. I talked to Kathy DeChambeau over at East Lansing. She gave me tons of information. Some of it was really inspirational and a lot of it was very disheartening, but Courtney and I haven't had a chance to circle back. I also learned after speaking with Leroy that there's already been a lot of effort on behalf of the Green Team looking into multifamily recycling. So I don't want to duplicate anything that's already happened. So I think that I need to get with Leroy and with Courtney. We need to figure out kind of what we know and what we don't know, and make sure we're not, doing things twice.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, moving on to is there anything from the tree?
Can I make one comment about environmental justice?
Sure.
Yeah, so earlier, I think Leroy was sharing a map of the township wetland layer from its mapping system. And I mentioned this with on the Wednesday morning group, but I spent a little bit of time looking at where the flood risk appears to be just from the data that are available on the township's website, wondering to what degree there was a question of equity in risk for flooding. And I don't have any firm analytical findings, but my first impression is that most of the properties in the township that are at most risk of flooding are actually in some of our older subdivisions, especially right along the river. So Indian Hills, Ottawa Hills, and Tacoma Hills were all developed by the same group, Anger Realty, on a lot of land that you would never build on today. And it's sort of an interesting finding on that it may be that some of our higher value residential property is at most risk of flooding, which is sort of I found that interesting, and I'm not sure where to go with it, but I thought I'd throw that out. I also,
yep.
I was also going to say that there is an ongoing project that I'll mention later to improve the drains around that Okemos Road M43 intersection that I think speaks to this issue of where some of our older subdivisions and our older commercial areas were built and the flooding risk that comes with them.
Yeah, actually, Bill, after you had mentioned that about the township maps and the different layers, I kind of checked out my own subdivision and found out that we're kind of surrounded by a flood hazard zone, which I thought, well, that's good to know. Actually, it wasn't a big surprise because, you know, I always knew that the 100-year floodplain was like across the street. So I wasn't really surprised. I didn't quite realize there were designations for flood hazard zones. So I guess, you know, I may be investing in a kayak or something, but let's see. Okay, moving on to the tree team. Anything new from the tree team?
I believe the tree team kind of morphed into the green infrastructure study group, but we can certainly bring back the tree team as needed. Any of you tree teamers want to chime in?
I guess I did talk to Kathy DeChambeau more about the Tree City designation stuff. I got a lot of great information. I passed some of it on to Phil and Leroy. I think we should just stand by and keep working towards that end.
Did you get any of the information from Kevin Sayers?
Yep, I did talk to Kevin.
What I think would be a rather serious constraint for us for getting Tree City. We have to admit and accept responsibility. As I read it, the ordinance would have to say that we're responsible for all street trees in the township. And if you read one of his messages, I think to Leroy, he suggested that there have been a couple of townships have tried, and the Tree City USA people rejected the application because they were, I think, very much like we are, that every time I've talked about trees along our roadways, we found out that we're not responsible for it. The county is. And I think that, I don't know how we pass an ordinance that says that we accept the responsibility without considerable more investment. And I'm not sure if Phil would be able to run that by the board to get a lot more investment in probably personnel and managing trees along our streets. So that's something I think we need to I like the idea, but when Kevin sent that, it seems like it might be difficult to deal with.
Let me circle back with him about that specifically and see what he says. And then I'll report back to you.
Okay.
And that's a good point, Jim. As a township, we subcontract by state law with the county road department, do all of our roads, for all the thoroughfares. We're responsible for the neighborhood roads. There's been a little bit of an exception to that with our road bonding we passed last year, that the counties let us run those projects, but by and large, we don't have the ability to have our own road crew. The money doesn't come to us directly, it goes to the county, but then divides it up by population throughout the county. So we, as such, lose the designation to manage our right of ways, which I think is what the point of that email was. And we can't really control the tree cover along our right of ways because it's really the county's call. Leroy knows this. We were initially talking about putting trees along Central Park Drive rather than around Chippewa. And we heard from the county that that wasn't going to pass their muster. They didn't want those trees there. They thought they might invade the drainage tile. I don't know their full reasons, but they didn't like the idea at all of us lining the sidewalks along Central Park Drive, which points to the issue with the county having control over the right of way rather than the township.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, we're up to reports, and I think the first one is from the Board of Trustees. Courtney?
Thank you. I don't have too much to report. You know, yesterday was a big day for everybody. So the trustees themselves had already been chosen in the primary election, but I get to serve another 4 years with you if you'll have me. One thing that I thought might be interesting to you that that the board is working on is downtown Okemos. So, you know, due to COVID, we've been putting a delay again for redevelopment, but the board is working really hard with the developer to actually at least demo the buildings, the vacant buildings that are there. So the environmental contamination has been cleaned up. We'll demo the buildings that are there to make it a safer place. We've got some asbestos and lead remediation to do prior to that. So a little bit of heads up there. That should happen around December. And then as far as Hazlet Village Square, we also have some environmental cleanup to do there, and some demo will begin here this spring. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. We're up to Brownfield Redevelopment Authority.
So Courtney covered it. You know, the Hazlet Village project is. We did have a meeting on October 15th, but it was very bureaucratic. It was mostly just discussion of the developer and the township had slightly different numbers for the reimbursement agreement and scheduling and so forth, and what kinds of what percentage had to be put as a contingency and so forth. And so this was fairly legalistic and not really, well, to be quite honest, those kinds of meetings don't end up meaning a lot to me. I listen to the numbers and I try to understand them, but since I don't have a lot of other reference points, I bow to the greater knowledge of more experienced people who were there. But that's what it was. It was just adjusting the agreements. There wasn't any sort of major new decisions or projects listed.
Thank you, Ned. We're on to the energy team. The energy team sponsored a virtual solar tour during October, and it worked out pretty well. We had 11 videos on YouTube, and most of them had to do with rooftop solar and presentations by homeowners, and most of them from Meridian Township. Before October, we had had about 268 viewings, but in October, we got an additional 187, which was up like a 70% increase, which I think was pretty good over that period of time. So that was kind of a manageable thing for us to do, and I think worked out pretty good to, again, keep getting the word out to homeowners that, you know, solar is an option that they should consider, and here's different factors to kind of take into account. The other thing, that there was some discussion at the energy team meeting about the $300,000 for solar race next year. And Rob from Absolute Solar has been participating on our solar energy team. He's the contractor for the two systems that are going in this year at the farmers market and the fire station. And so he had actually volunteered, he had went ahead and identified some various options for the different buildings, and had done some analysis, which was passed on to Derek, which I think was kind of helpful for Derek to kind of see what different options are. And I think Derek's reaction was that he was thinking the next project should probably go in for the service center. And so that does kind of make some sense considering their electric use. And so that's it for the energy team. And moving on to the green team.
I already mentioned that we're thinking about a recycling event in the spring. It's the main item. If any of you are interested in getting involved with the green team, you are welcome. John, I think you froze up for a second.
Yeah, can you still hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Jim, Land Preservation Advisory Board. I think you're on mute.
Going from mute to unmute is kind of difficult. We've been having, the Land Press has been meeting outside in safe environments during the summer. I think we've had now 2 meetings inside, and I believe we have done the last violation of policy for inside meetings. So our next meetings are now going to be Zoom meetings also. So we were inside at the service center. So now we're going to be to Zoom just like this group is. We were going to have a meeting. We were scheduled originally for a meeting for next week. Happens to turn out to be Veterans Day, and the township offices are all closed. So we'll be putting it back a week to November 18th rather than the 11th. Our last meeting had quite a little bit of information that we might want to share. One of our properties, the East Lansing South Preserve, which sits along the south edge of the railroad and west of Carlton Road. There's actually 2 properties there that straddle Carlton. There's actually northern pike that spawn in there. And we talked about improving, and we're going to have to probably work with Eagle and whatever else we're able to do to try to improve that whole habitat. And we also discussed the fact of a lot of, we've already talked about it, but this is not wetlands, but encroachment on the land preserve by the neighbors around it. And so we're going to try to take some kind of positive action to try to maintain the boundaries of that particular property. We had another part of our meeting, we dealt with what Bill has already talked about, the Okemos Road, Grand River road modification to avoid the flooding. And we've talked about possibly utilizing for mitigation some of the land in our central uplands right near that. And I think I may have even reported on this last time very briefly, but we have to wait until the engineers get back to us and tell us and make a request on what they might like to do for mitigation in that area. And I'm not sure where that is going to go with it. One other real interesting thing, those of you who go to Lake Lansing North, you know that we've got a fairly extensive part of the preserve that is part of the land preserve system. The county has come to us and they're wanting to improve some of the paths in there. Now, one of the things that Land Pres is not wanting to do is have a lot of paths and trails and developed trails in natural areas. But there's already a trail there, and so there's no real problem with that. But the trail has a few places where there's a small wooden bridge that has crossed. They're falling into disrepair. The Ingham County Parks is preparing to ask for a state grant, apply for a state grant to upgrade some of those bridges and some of the low areas in there. We're wanting to make sure that everything is done so that the wetlands and the small ponds, the ephemeral pools are not damaged. So next time you're walking out that way or sometime in the I guess they have to apply for the grant first, but there will be an attempt to upgrade the trail system in there. No new trails, but just improve the ones that are there. Another thing, those of you who might be interested, as of 2 days ago, there have been 85 deer harvested in the township. Last year, over the whole season, there were only 83. So I don't know how much longer it lasts, but we've already surpassed last year, and I counted only 6 out in my backyard this evening. So there's still more where they come from. Another thing that's been going with the land preserves is our always forget exactly what her title is, but Emma Campbell is having the Meridian Conservation Corps. She's having workshops, and if anybody wants to go out this Saturday, out to Lake Lansing North, there's going to be a large leaf raking exercise. I guess one thing has happened, there have been a lot of leaves that have been piled up over a long time, and they're damaging the native vegetation. So they're going to try to rake the leaves off of the native vegetation that's more desirable and move the leaves to a different spot. So that'll be this coming Saturday, starting at 9:30 and going till noon. And if anybody would be so inclined out there, it would be at the Lake Lansing Warming Shelter off of Lake Drive. So if anybody wants to participate in that. Also, in the afternoon, in the Southwest Uplands Preserve, there's going to be invasives removals. It's going to be for only a small group of people, so if anyone's interested, you might want to contact Emma on that. And then on November 21st, there will be another Meridian Conservation Corps effort for invasives on the Tyhart Land Preserve. It's just on the north side of Tyhart Road, there's an awful lot of autumn olive and other invasive species that have gotten in there. We're gonna be trying to get some control of that. So I don't normally have a lot to say here, but there was a lot that happened at our last meeting and a lot going on now.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Yeah, a lot is going on, boy. Tom, we're up to you about the Michigan Township Association and any state legislation or other activity downtown.
Yeah, thanks, John. Really not too much to report. As was mentioned earlier, the real focus has been on the election leading up to yesterday and kind of the outcome of yesterday. But Jim did remind me of something that did occur yesterday that you might have some interest in, and that is a statewide proposal 1 regarding the Natural Resources Trust Fund. And one of the things that that proposal does, and it passed overwhelmingly, I think about 80% of support. But one of the things it does do is provide a minimum of 25% of the funds that are expended to development projects, and redevelopment will be included as well. So things like what Jim was mentioning at the park in North Lake Lansing, likelihood of getting state funding for that in the future has increased with the passage of that proposal. So other than that, not really anything to report at this point.
Hey, thanks. See, Bill, we're on to the Planning Commission.
Yeah, thanks. The last meeting of the Planning Commission was on September 14th, so not since we've last met, and we've covered earlier this evening forwarding the memo from Cliff Walls with some cover, and I'm looking forward to engaging with the Planning Commission on that topic.
Transportation Commission.
Yeah, again, we've touched on the MDOT upcoming resurfacing of M43 and the implications for managing stormwater along that stretch, basically from Playmakers down to Okemos Road, and the wetland impacts that are likely to come with improving that side path on the north side of M43 across from Playmakers, and potentially doing some mitigation activities on township land. I would only underline that that water that's draining from that area, which this project is intended to, as I understand it, improve the flow of water out of the roadway into the river. And when we think about the implications of increasing impervious surface in the third phase of the Hannah Farms development project, the ANDEV project, I think we need as a township to be cognizant of the amount of water that we're bringing into the river at what speed, and to the degree that those whatever mitigation measures can be installed as part of that project, alleviate stormwater problems downriver, the better. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Bill. We're up to public comments, but this is also an opportunity, John, you're the public. Do you have anything you'd like to say at this time, or?
I don't really have anything more right now. I just have been looking into the possibility of some things along the line of that little thing that I played that might deal with select areas of concern that might be able to be put together musically or in some form that would be somewhat entertaining, but that would also pass along some important information, at least what the commission would consider to be important information environmentally. And just going to continue looking for ways of approaching that, different ways of putting that out there for people to listen to and maybe absorb.
Oh, super. Hey, thanks, John. Yeah, Susan?
I don't know if, Bill, you can answer this with, when there's a development like the lodges, that or any sort of development that would significantly increase the amount of impervious area and flow into the river. Do you know how that is taken into account with TMDL monitoring on the red cedar? Because the red cedar is impaired for E. coli. And does that ever get incorporated in any of the TMDL monitoring and assessment?
Yeah, you're reaching the limit of my technical expertise, but in those discussions, I've heard mainly about quantity of flow and less about water quality. So total maximum daily loads, E. coli and others, I have not, I don't believe our ordinance considers those issues in stormwater management, and typically defers to the drain commissioner. But maybe Phil or Courtney can correct me if I've got that wrong.
In my time on the board, 4 years now, those discussions have not come, specific regulations have not been brought before the board. So if they're dealt with, Susan, they're dealt with it at the staff level. They're not part of the board. They haven't been part of the board discussion.
Because the reason I ask is because E. coli levels are very much related to runoff. And given that the red cedar, as I understand it, is an impaired water body for E. coli, and there is a TMDL monitoring plan for the red cedar. That's why I'm asking the question, and should it be part of?
Yeah, my understanding from the folks I've talked to, both at Michigan State University and at the state of Michigan, is that it's still unclear to what degree that E. coli impairment results from agricultural uses upstream of Meridian Township, from septic systems, from pet waste, from wildlife, or from other sources. So my understanding at this point is it's an open question of the source of the impairment, and thus the control of it is unclear. But again, we're at the limit of my technical expertise.
Other comments or questions, or before we adjourn for Bill, Jim, I mean?
Yeah, I'd like to ask one. I think there was an election yesterday, if I remember.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard that.
That was a month ago? Or may have been a year ago.
Yeah. And I wonder if either of our board members know if the land preservation renewal was approved. Either Phil or Court.
It was approved, yes, by an overwhelming majority.
Okay. When I've tried to look on the website, I don't find anything that I can tell what's really happened. Thank you.
Jim, I'm on the county clerk's website, and that's where you would find it. So yeah, if you go to the county clerk's, you have all of the unofficial election results.
I got my answer already, though.
You don't need to.
I don't need to. Thank you.
These meetings are great. Lots of good exchange of information.
Can I raise a related issue to the election?
Sure.
I think I mentioned at a previous meeting how impressed I was at the township's ability to rally volunteers, not just for the recycling event, but 2 weeks later for the tree planting effort right there at Chippewa. And I had the chance to participate in the election as well. And again, the residents of the township have stepped forward to work at the polls. And it's just another really reassuring sign of the community buy-in that we have in this township that makes it a great place to be.
Good point. Yep. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, seeing no hands raised, can I have a motion to adjourn?
No, I don't want to adjourn. I want to keep talking.
Forever. Okay. Oh, Jim.
Wait, I gotta look. No,
I have my hand up.
I'll second it. Okay, all in favor of adjourning, raise your hand. Bill changed his mind. Okay, thanks, everybody. Good meeting. Take care.
Thank you.